The Mystery of the Stewart Mansion. Jim Riley was 14 years old and lived in the beautiful city of San Francisco, California. He was short, thin, and wore glasses. With his brown hair and blue eyes, Jim looked like an ordinary boy, but his life had not been easy. His mother died when he was 6, and his father lived in another city. So Jim stayed with his grandfather on Telegraph Hill. From their living room, they had a wonderful view of San Francisco Bay and the Golden Gate Bridge. Jim had just started high school, and he liked it a lot. His favorite subject was science. On weekends, he worked part-time at a supermarket to earn some extra pocket money. Every morning, he walked down Telegraph Hill to meet his friends Brian Wilson and Susan Hardy at the bus stop in Washington Square before heading to Galileo High School together. Washington Square was a beloved landmark, a park filled with green grass, flowers, cafes, and shops. But after a long dry season, the grass had turned yellow, and the flowers were dead. One morning, Jim met Brian, his best friend, a tall, athletic boy with curly blonde hair and green eyes. Brian played basketball on the school team and helped his parents at their grocery store on weekends. Susan Hardy soon joined them. She was a bright, kind African-American girl who babysat for her neighbors, the Moreno family. Her older brother, Tom, was a biology student and football player at San Francisco University. The three talked about their math test, joking about how difficult it would be, before the bus arrived. At school, they endured a hard math test and were relieved when it was lunchtime. Later, they had science class with Mr. Woods, their favorite teacher, who always made experiments fun. After school, Jim and Brian planned to watch Brian's basketball game that Sunday, while Susan had babysitting duties. They also decided to go to the movies the next night. That foggy February afternoon, Jim was walking home up Telegraph Hill when he passed the old Stewart mansion, a large, mysterious wooden house surrounded by a rusty fence. It had been abandoned for years, and Jim often wondered about it. But that day, as he glanced up, he froze. Behind the second-floor window, he saw the pale face of a little girl with long dark hair staring down at him. Then, suddenly, she vanished into the fog. Terrified, Jim ran home and told his grandfather what he had seen. His grandfather smiled kindly and said no one lived in the Stewart mansion. It was over 100 years old and had a dark history. Mr. Stewart, a wealthy scientist, had once lived there with his wife and daughter until a mysterious accident killed them both. The tragedy had driven Mr. Stewart back to New York. Still, Jim was sure of what he had seen. The next evening, Jim met Brian for a movie. On his way, he stopped again at the mansion. The fog swirled around the old gates, and the trees creaked in the wind. But there was no face this time. After the film, Jim told Brian everything, and Brian, though skeptical, agreed to come with him next time. A few days later, they told Susan, who was both frightened and curious. She insisted on joining them. One cold, sunny afternoon, the three friends climbed Telegraph Hill to the Stewart mansion. They stood at the gate, looking up at the windows, but saw nothing. Suddenly, They smelled something strange, a foul, rotten odor like sulfur. Then they noticed yellow smoke rising near one of the basement windows. "Maybe it's a secret laboratory," Jim suggested nervously. Frightened, they decided to leave. A few days later, the Chinese New Year parade filled Grant Avenue with crowds, fireworks, and a giant paper dragon. While watching the parade, Jim spotted the same little girl he'd seen at the mansion. She disappeared suddenly behind the dragon, and he couldn't find her again. He began to wonder if she was real or a ghost. The following evening, the three friends met again at Jim's house, each carrying a flashlight. They climbed over the fence and entered the overgrown garden of the mansion. Looking through dirty basement windows, they saw an old study filled with dusty furniture and, strangely, a newspaper from the previous day. In another room, they noticed a large painting of a man, woman, and a little girl, the Stewart family. "That's her," Susan whispered, pointing to the girl with long dark hair. They crept around to the back and peered through another window into the basement. Inside, they saw tables, test tubes, and laboratory equipment. "It looks like our school's chemistry lab," Jim said. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Terrified, the three ran out of the garden, chased by a swarm of bats flapping from the trees. That night, Jim dreamed of a voice crying for help from inside the mansion. He woke up to find it was only a dream. Or was it? Days later, he and his friends returned to the mansion. This time, a big black book lay open on a laboratory table. Someone had been there. Around the same time, something strange happened in Washington Square. After months of drought, the grass suddenly turned green, and the flowers bloomed again. The newspaper called it a miracle, but scientists were puzzled. Some called it magic, while others suspected chemicals were involved. Then tragedy struck. Ducks and fish in the park pond began dying. Tests revealed traces of a new, highly toxic chemical similar to an old fertilizer called Green X, banned for its danger to humans and animals. Jim, Susan, and Brian were horrified. They suspected someone from the Stewart mansion was behind it. Susan went to watch her brother's football game one night, and by chance overheard two young women talking about an experiment in Lombard Street. That was the street where the mansion stood. Excited, she told Jim and Brian, and they decided to go to the police. The next morning, they met Sergeant Chan at the Chinatown police station. After hearing their story, he agreed to investigate and asked the three to accompany the police to the mansion that afternoon. When they arrived, yellow smoke still rose from the basement. The police broke down the door and rushed inside. In the hidden laboratory, they found 4 university students, 2 women and 2 men, working with chemicals and computers. With them was a little girl and an older man with long dark hair and a silver earring, the same man Jim had seen before. His name was Ben Bradley. The student confessed that they had created a powerful new fertilizer that could make plants grow without water. They had secretly tested it in Washington Square, unaware that it was dangerously toxic. Sergeant Chen arrested them all and confiscated the chemicals. The little girl turned out to be one of the student sisters, not a ghost after all. The next day, Jim, Brian, and Susan visited the police station. Sergeant Chen thanked them for their help, explaining that the student experiment had caused the deaths of the ducks and fish, and Washington Square would have to be closed for cleanup. Relieved that the mystery was solved, the three friends left the station smiling. "Pizza for everyone tonight," Jim said. "Great idea," laughed Brian. "But not at Washington Square," added Susan with a grin. And they all burst into laughter, happy that their strange and frightening adventure had come to an end.